So I've been seeing a lot of people going back and forth online pretty much since before the new season even released in regards to Rogue. I feel like she's been being speculated more than any other character in regards to what her role would be. I've seen a lot of people going back and forth saying they think she needs to be a tank based off of her abilities in the comics, and that would be the only thing that would make sense. And I've seen a lot of other people saying that she would have to be a DPS, and that would also be the only other thing that could possibly make sense based off of how she is in the comics. And it kind of has me thinking. Let's talk about it. YouTube, what's going on, man? It's Father Dark. I'm recording this on a Sunday evening, but by the time you hear it, it'll be Monday morning. So I hope that you all had a great weekend. If not, I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope your week turns out to be a lot better. But let's go ahead and get into it. So like in the intro, like I was saying about Rogue, a lot of people have been constantly going back and forth. Any video that I've ever made talking about Rogue, I feel like it's gotten more like of an argument kind of started amongst people in the community over what Rogue should be. And this does happen a lot, but I've just noticed it to be way more with Rogue than pretty much anyone else. I think probably Ultron was like the only one. And with Ultron, that was only because with the leaks, they were saying he was supposed to be a support. And there were just a lot of people that were like, no, I don't really know how he'd be a support, et cetera, et cetera. But like I said, with Rogue, though, I've noticed it a lot more. And the thing that I find interesting is that when Gambit was first being teased, or actually, let me go back. So with all the leaks that we've had, pretty much since like Sue Storm came out back in season 1, all the leakers have been pretty spot on in regards to their roles. Now, abilities and stuff like that, just how the characters are going to look, maybe some of their skill sets, whatever. Those things have kind of like varied a little bit here and there. Not too much, but enough, to at least make it like something of mention. But still, though, overall, their roles, though, what their actual role was going to be, whether it was a support, DPS, or tank or something like that, they've all been pretty much spot on. Now, this was the first time when Gambit released that it was something where all the leakers were pretty much in agreement. They were dead set on it. They were saying that Rogue and Gambit were coming. It was going to be the season of like couples or whatever the case was. When he came out, to everybody's surprise, pretty much for the most part. I mean, I know there was a few exceptions. There was some people out there like, oh, well, Gambit will be a support, but really that was mostly them like having wishful thinking. I don't think it was a thing where they legitimately thought Netease was going to make him a support. There's always that one random person that goes against the grain, especially when you only have 3 options to choose from. It's not like there's 100 different options. So you got really, really lucky or something. It's like if your odds are like 1 in 3, those are pretty good odds, and I would take those odds. I'm not even a gambling type of guy, right? But like I said, though, there might have been a handful of people that said that here and there, like, oh, look, I was right. And it's like, brother, come on. We all know that was just wishful thinking. It wasn't that you legitimately thought that, right? But like I said, when Gambit came out and he was a support, it really threw a lot of people off. Most of the people, like pretty much every comment that I got in regards to Gambit in any previous videos that I did that were speculation, everybody was like, there's no way that he would be anything other than a DPS. He blows up stuff in regards to the comics and stuff, like charging up the cars or charging up energy or whatever matter. And that's his thing. So like, when exactly is he healing stuff? And yeah, you did have some people that said, yeah, well, there's this exception with these characters, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, though, we all were pretty much in agreement that he'd more than likely be a DPS and that Rogue was supposed to be a support. And that's what the leaks had stated. Now, the thing is that I'm usually one of the people that's one of the biggest advocates for the fact that with live service games like this, and it's not even like it's something that we have to guess or assume, it's just a fact. When you have a live service game, you can't afford to like make the content as it's coming out. You have to like plan this stuff out at least like a year in advance, sometimes even further than that. And then, by the time that we're getting this content that we're getting now, they're already working on the stuff that will be coming out this time the next year around, right? And that's because as a live service game, the main thing that keeps people coming back is your content and the fact that it has to come out very frequently. Originally, they were doing content updates like every month and a half, and the seasons were like 3 months long. And they said, hey, you know what? That's not fast enough in comparison to our competitors. So we're gonna start releasing stuff like every month, pretty much, right? We'll do the beginning of the season 1 month, and then mid-season the next month or whatever, right? So that way, there's just a constant flow of content coming out. But I remember an interview, and I don't remember exactly when it was, what it was during. You guys can let me know in the comments if you remember exactly what it was. But I think it was somewhere like toward the end of like the Ignite tournament or something like that. They were interviewing Guang Guang, and one of the things that they had brought up to him was the fact that the community was really unhappy with the fact that there weren't really as many supports that were getting released and stuff like that. And the same thing with tanks. It was basically like they were kind of like focusing more on DPS, and it was driving a lot of people from the game and making a lot of other people really upset and stuff like that. And they had asked him a lot of questions questions, and he seemed perfectly fine until they got to that one. And I remember people were making memes and stuff about it, about how he almost seemed like he started sweating bullets, right? He got very nervous, and he was just kind of like saying the same thing I just said in regards to the fact that, they plan this stuff out a year in advance and they can't really go back and change stuff. Now, the thing is that around the time when all this started going down and we were getting closer to the new season, a lot of people noticed that there was a shift in kind of how they started to do like their promotion, and they kind of went silent and didn't say anything. Some people were even speculating they might delay the season, and some people were saying, oh, well, it's just because they've been giving the content creators like early access, and some of the content creators were speaking bad about certain characters, kind of like with Angela. They said Angela was dog water, and some people were saying that caused certain people to not want to like care about the update or want to play the game or something. And at first that sounded good, but then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, what if Gambit actually was supposed to be a DPS, but then at the last minute they said, hey, you know what? We got to go back and we got to change this. And yeah, we can still make him kind of like a Mantis, kind of like hybrid, where he does damage and stuff as well. Not saying other supports don't do damage, but basically he can be very aggressive, but he can also heal as well, right? And to me, that just kind of makes sense, because if I was in their shoes and I was actually paying attention to the community, because it's not hard, you just have to get on Twitter or Reddit, and just scroll for a few minutes, and you'll see how many people were saying that they're like, listen, if they don't release a support, I'm uninstalling, I'm not going to play this, I'm going to go to Overwatch or start playing Battlefield or whatever else. There's so many other games that are out right now that are really fun. They got a lot of competition from like Arc Raiders and a lot of other stuff as well. Not necessarily saying it has to be a hero shooter, but not everybody that plays a hero shooter only plays hero shooters exclusively, right? Kind of like myself included. So point I'm making is that it wouldn't be crazy to me if they went back and they changed Gambit to say, you know what, there was a period of time in the comics where Gambit actually had his full potential, released or whatever, because a lot of people don't know, but Gambit actually is like damn near an Omega level mutant. It's just that he had a block put in his brain to where he couldn't like remember that he was that powerful. So he basically nerfed himself in a sense. And at one point he gets that block, taken off or released or whatever. And he got to a point to where he could just control energy and like tissue and matter and stuff on like a subatomic level, or whatever the case was. I forget exactly how it went, but I just know that he had the option to, instead of just charging things and destroying stuff, he could also heal people's tissue as well. So that did happen. Now the thing with this is that with comics have been around for so long, right? So long. You're talking about like 100 years and maybe even more of comics being around, and so many different people writing, storylines and characters and stuff like that. And some people favor certain people, and whatever the case is, you can take pretty much any character, and if you really tried hard enough, you can find a time where they healed someone, or where they were like, they got like cosmic god type powers and stuff like that. You can just do it with anybody. So it's not some crazy thing, right? And this is the same thing with Rogue. Now, a lot of people will sit back and they'll look at Rogue and they'll say, oh, well, Rogue, she originally like absorbed Carol Danvers' powers. That's how she's able to fly and why she's so strong, etc. And usually when Rogue absorbs powers, she only has them like temporarily. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure usually they're just it's like a temporary thing. But the thing that happened with Carol Danvers is that she basically like held on way longer than she would normally, and those powers became permanent, and that's why she's able to fly and why she is like super strong, right? But there's also been times, numerous different comics, y'all can look it up yourself, where she was able to basically like take away people's ailments and stuff like that, like the same way that she can take their powers. She was able to take their sickness. She was able to absorb incoming damage and like shoot it back out as healing for other people and stuff like that. Once again, you can take any character, and in the 100 years that people have been writing these characters, at some point in time, someone has made this character ridiculously OP. Think about like Wanda, for example, right? You look at like House of M. Wanda was so ridiculously broken. She literally just said no more mutants and got rid of like 99% of the mutant population. And at this time when she did that, there was like thousands of mutants that we just knew of. These were like the popular ones that, had their own comics or were on teams or were in the comic books at some point in time. These weren't just counting like just the regular mutants that exist every day. They got, whack powers that nobody cares about. It's like, oh, I can think and the dishes are clean or something, right? Those are ones that they're not making it to any kind of teams or anything. But the point I'm making is that it got to a point with Marvel Comics to where people weren't buying X-Men comics as much as they were like in the late 90s, early 2000s and stuff like that. So Marvel was like, look, we got to figure out some kind of MacGuffin type way to kind of tone it down with the X-Men and bring them back to like a more of a core level. And that was the reason why they allowed her to do that. But if you look at Wanda in the comics now, or right now, she's nowhere near as powerful as she was during like House of M. And this happens all the time. Storm just became like a cosmic goddess in the comics not too long ago. She literally lost her powers in a series that they had with her. And then she ends up dying and then immediately gets reborn, but like as like a cosmic goddess or whatever. Same thing with Spider-Man. Spider-Man has gotten like cosmic godlike powers and stuff like that. Every character has had moments where crazy stuff has happened. Kind of like with the Phoenix Force thing. There was a whole comic where all the Avengers and some of the X-Men were fighting over like the Phoenix Force, and it just kept jumping around. So that's why it wasn't crazy that in like the last season, I think it was, whenever Jean Grey got released, we had like the Battle Pass where you had all these different characters that had like the Phoenix Force skins and stuff like that, right? And you could just go on and on. And this is just like in Earth 616. We're not even talking about multiverse level stuff here. So it wouldn't be crazy that Rogue would come out and be a support. Because just like with Gambit, they can take any little thing they want to because this is a multiverse game. And once again, it doesn't even have to be a multiverse game. Technically in 616, you could take whatever you wanted to if that's what they were like saying that it comes from and take that. But we've seen how they basically have creative liberties and the right to be able to do that from Disney, saying like, listen, you can do pretty much whatever you want to as long as you don't go over a certain line or whatever, right? But as long as you guys are bringing the numbers and you're sending us our money or whatever for the rights to our IP and stuff, we're going to let you kind of have fun with it or do whatever. They even told them they could make OC characters, meaning like original characters and stuff like that. So, that's just my kind of thoughts on it. And I know a lot of people are saying too, well, we just got to support, so why would we get another one? Well, the thing is that I wouldn't be surprised if they were tired of hearing people complain about how there aren't enough supports, where they just said, listen, we're going to go ahead and give you like two of the characters that people have really been looking forward to outside of like Deadpool and Thanos and Ghost Rider. Like those are some characters that people have really been wanting. But I feel like those are like the rainy day characters, even though we're supposed to be getting Deadpool next season. But I'm just saying that these are two characters that people know and they love. And they're one of the power couples of the Marvel universe next to like Sue Storm and Reed Richards and a few other people and stuff. But it wouldn't blow my mind if they were like, listen, we're going to give you one support that's more like a support DPS hybrid, and then we'll give you a support tank type hybrid. Because to my knowledge, we really don't have a support tank type of like hybrid. Like we have other characters that are like DPS tank hybrids, tank DPS hybrids, but we really don't have like a support tank hybrid. So it really wouldn't blow my mind like if that was the case and they were just like, here, take this, hush, and then maybe next season we'll give you two tanks or something, because people were saying, I don't really know how Elsa would be a tank, Elsa Bloodstone, but there are a lot of people that are saying that they think she should be a tank or whatever. Deadpool, yeah, he is similar to Wolverine, and Wolverine's not a tank, but it also wouldn't blow my mind if, Deadpool was a tank that had like, some type of melee ability with like his katanas or something up close, and then he had the ability to like shoot from a distance, kind of like if you think about it like a Blade or kind of like Emma, right, where they have like these dual kind of kits or whatever. So that wouldn't be crazy to me. But like I said, the point is that I do think that it's interesting with Rogue simply because her being able to like steal abilities, because that is something that's been consistently leaked, and I don't really know how true that is because these haven't been things that have been like leaked on the level that I feel comfortable to say like, oh yeah, that's probably more than likely what it is. Because sometimes we do get leaks like that where they actually show like a screenshot, kind of like with Ultron. We saw like what his actual abilities were way before he was released. I mean, it was back in like December of last year. They had the screenshot floating around, and when he released, it was pretty much identical to how it looks in game currently, right? And he didn't release for months and months on end. And I haven't seen anything like that with Rogue, but people do go on the files, they data mine, and they say, okay, well, she can steal up to 2 random abilities or something like that. But to me, she would still have to have some type of regular ability, which might be like a brawl or something like that. But like I said, though, it still wouldn't be crazy to me if they gave her some way to basically like take incoming damage and then maybe bring that back out as like healing or something. She doesn't have to be like a hardcore support, like how Gambit has, his main ability can do damage or it can heal, kind of. It could be more of like a Mantis situation where maybe you have like some slower healing or something over time, or like an Ultron where he has like that slower healing and stuff. But I do think, like I said, I think it's overall interesting though, and I would love to hear from you all what your thoughts and opinions are. I just think that there's too many people that kind of get on this oh, well, if you look at the comics, and it's like, brother, I've said it a million times and I'll keep saying it. The problem with this game, I'm not saying the problem like it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that if this was a game kind of like just like a random kind of, you know, whatever you want to call it, kind of like the last Avengers game that came out or whatever the case is, where you just select a hero and there's no need for tanks or supports or DPS or anything. You're just picking that character. They all have different skill sets and abilities. You can live out your hero fantasy to a Q. Or to a T, I mean, and it was just that simple, then it wouldn't really be a problem. But the problem that you run into with hero shooters is that someone has to be tank, someone has to be DPS, and someone has to be support. And while, yeah, you can sit here and say, oh, well, this character, they healed somebody one time. Okay, we could say Spider-Man could be a support because technically he's like genius level intellect. He could make some type of little spider tech that sticks on you and heals you or something. Or you could say Bruce Banner. He's technically a doctor. So, you know what I'm saying? He could technically, be a tank, healer hybrid or whatever. And while there are certain characters that you I feel like with tanks especially, with tanks, there are certain characters that I feel like we just would expect them to be tanks flat out. Like the Hulk is a really good example. Thor is a really good example. It's like we just wouldn't really want to see them as anything else, and I think people would kind of riot. But then Netease has surprised us, and like I said, people before. I saw so many comments. I actually read and respond to a lot of my comments and talk to a lot of different people in the community. Talking about hundreds and hundreds of comments per video. I make numerous videos per week. Been doing this on YouTube for a while, TikTok even longer, right? So I see people talking about it all the time. And one of the main things I saw was people saying that Gambit is going to be a DPS. In what reality would Gambit be a support? Then Gambit came out as a support. People were kind of thrown off. But the reception, in my opinion, a lot of people like Gambit. They have no issue with it. And I think it's because he is a good, comfortable balance between DPS and support. And the thing is, it's just a little teaser for next video. I am going to be talking about why some people do have an issue with Gambit and also talking about why people dislike Angela as of late and probably why they have. And not like dislike her like they think she's bad, but why people are getting really irritated with Angela. But that's just a little teaser for the next video or whatever. But like I said, though, those are just my thoughts on it, though. You all have your own thoughts and opinions. This is not an echo chamber. I love to hear from y'all. And also, too, this is just speculation. None of this is anything that we know for certain. But usually right before we get to that point where the new character, we're about to get the trailer and the dev talk and all that kind of stuff in regards to all of that, I do like to speculate. I think it's just something fun to do, especially with a game like this, where that is pretty much the only thing we have to really look forward to with the new seasons are the new characters releasing and seeing what Netease is going to do. Because like I said, with Gambit, they really surprised me. And I think they surprised a lot of other people, the majority of the community, by making him a support. Like you would have never in a million years, if you would have told me months before, or even like a few days before he released, or, they released his trailer, like, oh, Gambit's going to be a support. I'm like, in what world, And like I said, though, that's the interesting thing with this game is that they can really just do whatever they want. And a lot of times they do go with these very isolated moments, like the fact that Gambit was only able to heal people in the comics for a couple of issues. And then he was back to being normal Gambit or whatever, right? But that's his whole identity in Rivals now. But he's also still aggressive and can still be played like a DPS character. There's a lot of people out there that are picking Gambit that are only using him as a DPS character. There's good Gambits out there that heal as well, but let's just be real here. The DPS players, they're just like, you know what? Gambit looks fun. I'm going to play him and not heal anyone, right? So it is what it is. It's just something you got to deal with in hero shooters. But like I said, that's all I got for this video. That was just my kind of thoughts and opinions on it. But let me know in the comments what you all think. That's all I got for this video. I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm Father Dark, and I'll catch you on the next one.